make it 3.
Going for the St. Louis now.
Oh, no.
Son of a bitch.
You get your 2?
Yeah. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course, and today we are going to look at destroyers on ocean. Yes, the video went a little wonky there at the beginning, you might have noticed. Not sure what that was, but whatever. Moving on. Now, the reason why I wanted to put up another destroyer video is going over the forums, watching in-game and stuff. It does seem to be that, you know, destroyers are the class of ships that everyone is having the hardest time with, and I can understand it. I understand it for two reasons. First, you consider the people who are playing World of Warships who migrated from tanks, right? And in their minds, they might see a destroyer as being a scout, and that presents its own problems because the destroyer isn't solely a scout, right? And you can't necessarily do what's the word? You can't do. It's not passive scouting. You can do passive scouting in destroyers, but you can't just sit and stop in your destroyer and, I don't know, hide behind some sort of rock, right? And scout that way, or hide in some bush. We don't have that option here in World of Warships, so that can present one problem right off the bat, is people coming in and thinking that the destroyer is going to be a scout, and that's all that it does, or that's all that it's able to do. The next aspect to destroyers that I think creates issues for people is they just don't understand how a destroyer is used in World of Warships. They might understand how a destroyer was used historically, but World of Warships isn't a historical game. It's more arcadey, so you need to take that into account when you're operating your destroyer. So that's why I'm showing this video today. Not only is it a good example because we're on ocean and there is nowhere to hide, but it also shows you how we're going to be able to scout while at the same time being an effective deterrent for the enemy. Because ideally that's how you want to play your destroyers. Your Japanese destroyers. We always want to make that distinction as well. One destroyer is not the same as the other. Your Japanese destroyers, if you do want to use your destroyers to scout and to, shoot off torpedoes without ever being seen, well then yeah, you're going to want to look at Japanese destroyers to do that. If you're looking at more of gunship or fast action response maybe, then you would look at American destroyers. Those would be the roles that they would play easier. You can't really do that in a Japanese destroyer because the guns on your Japanese destroyers just aren't as good as an American destroyer. Just don't have the range, don't have the accuracy, don't have the rate of fire. So yeah, keep that in mind. Anyway, looking at the first part here of this battle, you can see I went into the middle. The reason why I went to the middle on ocean is for the scouting. Yes, there are no islands to hide behind. Generally speaking on this map, one side is going to go down the east side of the map, and the other side is going to go up the west side of the map. That's generally what happens. It's kind of like Ring Around the Rosie, and then you guys get to your base and you start firing in at each other. Yeah, that kind of works, but when I'm in this map and I'm in a destroyer, no, I'm going to the middle because I'm going to be able to see these enemies. Now, I mean, I didn't scout out these enemies, right? Like, I have ally ships around and I'm able to see them, and then this helps me because now I can start lining up on some targets here. There's turpitses over there in the background that have ran into each other, so that's a nice big juicy target. There's a Cleveland I'm eyeing down, all this stuff. And very important too to keep in mind that when you do enter into a battle with your destroyer, you really want to know two things. You want to know what is your torpedo range, and you want to know what is your detection range, right? As long as you know those things, you should have a much easier time playing these destroyers. You can see I was detected, and I'm being detected by that Cleveland. So I fire off torpedoes. Keep in mind, when you fire torpedoes and you're detected, the enemy ship is going to see those torpedoes in water, and they're going to be able to avoid those torpedoes, or should be able to avoid those torpedoes without any sort of issue at all, unless they're focused in on a target and they have their blinders up. They're just not paying attention, and they don't realize that torpedoes are coming into them until the last minute. Don't count on those situations. They don't happen too often. They do happen, but don't count on those sorts of situations. Another thing that's important to keep in mind with your Japanese destroyers is with any destroyer really, is the amount of torpedo launchers that you have. I've got 2 sets of 3 torpedo launchers. So generally speaking, I don't fire both of those at the same time. The reason for this is that, if I were to come across an enemy, I launch my first spread and then suddenly a destroyer pops out of nowhere, right, that I didn't see. Well, now I still have a second spread of torpedoes that I could launch if I need it. Or situations where the battles are happening close in, there's smoke up, you don't necessarily see a battleship, or you don't necessarily see the cruiser that's 2 kilometers away from you because of the smoke. As long as you can keep 1 torpedo loader in reserve, then you're going to be able to use those torpedoes when the situations arise. Again, I am spotted, but this time I'm spotted by aircraft, right? You can see the little aircraft symbol next to the detected symbol. So I know there's the aircraft spotting me. My anti-aircraft guns are off. Another suggestion here that I highly recommend you do when you're in a destroyer: turn off your anti-air. There is a time and a place for anti-air when you're in a destroyer, and that time and place is not at the beginning of the battle, nor is it mid-battle. So keep that in mind as well. I do have torpedoes going off for the turrets, right? That's what I want to hit. My other torpedoes are currently reloading because I shot that first spread off on the Cleveland. And this is another benefit to cycling these torpedoes, is that you have a really long reload on the Hatsuharu, on the Fubuki. As you work your way up, those destroyers, higher tiers, you get higher reloads. So you want to be able to cycle through your torpedo launchers, have 1 reloaded and 1 reloading. That's the best strategy that I've found, so that you can constantly be putting torpedoes down range, right? You can see my first torpedo spread that I shot off at the turrets has missed the turrets entirely, but now I've got a second spread of torpedoes on their way for the turrets, so that's excellent. And I was able to do that because I cycled through my torpedo launchers. If I would have launched both torpedoes at the same time at the turrets, I would be sitting here doing nothing because my torpedoes are reloading. This way I'm always able to get torpedoes downrange. The torpedoes that I had for the turrets haven't even hit yet, and I've launched my second wave at the turrets now as well. You can see the torpedoes on their way in for the turrets, and it actually does end up to be a nice nice hit there. Bit of coffee. There's also some really good guides about destroyers that you can find on the forums. I don't necessarily do guides myself. It's not that I'm not interested in them. I guess it's not my style to do. It just seems really dry and bland to me. I'd rather show actual game footage and talk about what I'm doing, the strategies I'm using. Generally, that's how I would operate. But there are some really good guides on the forums. I suggest you check them out. Take a look at those for destroyers if you're having trouble with your destroyers. It's something I would recommend. My second spread of torpedoes did go in and did finish off the turrets. So that's my first kill, and I think it's like 3 torpedo hits or something so far, so not too bad. This Mogami, though, is really, really close, and he's pretty concerning. So I launched a spread of torpedoes off at him, got 1 torpedo into him, almost finished him off. You'll notice I'm grouped up with Linwolf today, so he's in the back in his Atlanta shooting at the Mogami as well. Luckily, though, I do manage to get the kill. He was flooding, right? So got that kill. That's my second kill. Not too bad at all. My engine is gone, though. This would be a time to freak out, generally, yes. But luckily, I'm boating away from the enemy at full speed. I have, there's no danger around me. I don't have any planes to worry about, anything like that, so not a big deal. I'm just going to go, I slow down so I don't get too far from the enemy, but I just let my repair cool down, and then once it's done, fix the damage and get back into the action. Just got lucky in that situation. If you find yourself in a similar situation and there are enemies around, or your steering is gone and you're just boating straight towards the enemy, obviously cut your throttle, try reversing, and if you have smoke, throw up your smoke as well, just to keep yourself concealed, right? But we're back, engine is going, and I'm just going to go back to these same enemies and try to put more torpedoes into them and just sort of stall their whole advance here. You can see on the mini-map the enemy is coming up on that east side. I'm not too concerned about it because where I'm positioned. I'm not so far south like my friendly cruiser and destroyer down there. that I can't really get involved on that east side. By staying in the middle, like I'm doing here, I'm able to react to situations as they arise. In fact, this is the second time that I've talked about Ocean and how to play Ocean in a destroyer. Yes. That's why this might seem familiar. Again, just sort of refresher, just because there's so many people on the forums complaining about destroyers, saying how they're broken, they don't know how to use them, blah, blah, blah. It just takes a little skill to use the destroyers, and patience. You gotta have patience in these destroyers. And I know maybe patience is in short supply for these online games and the crowds that they attract, but for those of us who do have patience and do have the skill to use the destroyers, we love them. These destroyers are just amazing. More torpedoes on the way for the Pensacola there. He narrowly avoids that spread, though. It was close. But I do have another spread on their way as well. I don't think he actually hits them because he avoided that first spread. He then avoids the second spread as well. So another thing, another benefit to spreading out your torpedo spreads is that you fire one spread at the direction that the enemy is going in, and then once the enemy turns and maneuvers to avoid that spread of torpedoes, then you launch your next spread of torpedoes on their new course. So the enemy thinks that they've avoided the torpedoes and they're going, ha ha ha, that stupid destroyer, and before they know it, there's another spread of torpedoes coming in to finish them off. So that's another benefit to spreading out your torpedoes. That was close. I really, really wanted to get a hit on that Tirpitz. Just wasn't meant to be, though. Firing my guns now at the Pensacola. I'm doing this because he's so close. I'm already spotted, and he's on such low health. So if I don't finish him off, an ally will. And there you can see ally finished him off. And I'm still detected because I fired my guns. You'll remain detected for a little while, but it will quickly go away. There it goes. And I'm safe now. I am in a smoke screen as well. This is just coincidental. I think there's a friendly destroyer around me that put the smoke screen up, but I'm making use of it. Keep in mind, even though when you throw up a smoke screen, just because you're boating around and you might leave that area, the smoke screen is still there. You can turn around, you can go back into your smoke screen and hide. And that's another big complaint a lot of people have, is that smoke screens are broken. They're not broken. You just don't understand how it works. So you launch you hit your smoke screen, you're going at full speed. Right? So your ship is coming out of the smoke screen periodically and then going back into the smoke screen. So what you'll find is that you're coming in and out of being detected. 1 minute you're detected, next minute you're not, and so on and so forth. This is because you're going so fast that the smoke doesn't have time to envelop your ship. That is why when I launch my smoke screens, and it's a pretty sticky situation, I do always try to launch it and turn. Essentially, I'm just doing a big circle. Just a big circle. I'm launching the smoke screen, I'm turning in back on myself, and then I'm coming back around into the smoke screen that I just launched. That is a really good strategy to use, and I'd recommend that you take a look at using that strategy. Very effective. In closed beta, your smoke screens lasted a lot longer. When you hit your smoke screen button, it was like a minute of smoke screen. That was a nice kill as well. But it was like a minute of smoke screen, so you could be lazy with your smoke screens. You didn't have to be so strategic with them. You didn't have to necessarily worry about whether or not you're spotted, because you've got so much smoke going on that it's easy to maneuver around and get yourself enveloped in that smoke screen. Upon full release and the changes made to the smoke screen, they just don't last as long, so you're not going to be able to utilize them in that manner. You have to be aware of the smoke screen and circle in on yourself. Just drive in circles. It will work, I'm telling you. I do it all the time. And that way you're going to stay in that smoke screen, and you're going to be able to utilize it even after you're no longer putting out smoke. Now you're actually in the smoke screen, taking advantage of it, so keep that in mind as well. There's so many things with destroyers that you need to keep in mind, and I would argue that destroyers are one of the hardest classes to play in the game, and one of the classes that require the most skill to play in the game, because it just incorporates a whole lot of different aspects. There's the scouting aspect, there's patience, there's using your torpedoes strategically, both offensively and defensively. There's the strategic use of your timers, your countdowns, being aware of how much time it takes to reload one spread of torpedoes, how many spread of torpedoes do you have in the ship, and what's the best way to deploy those torpedoes so that you can continuously fire down range, right? There's a lot of aspects to destroyers that you need to take into account. All that being said, I didn't just jump into a destroyer and figure out, and suddenly, be able to play it. No, because I've grinded my way up through the tiers, I learnt all of these things along the way from tier 2 to tier 8 now in my destroyers. Learnt these things along the way, and utilize them. Also, every destroyer is different. You'll start noticing these differences, especially when you get to like the tier 5, the tier 6, and the tier 7 level. You'll notice gradual differences moving up, and then when you get to tier 8, it's almost like a whole new world of destroyers. So by the time you get to tier 8, you need to have these fundamentals built up and under your belt in order to utilize that tier 8 a lot more effectively. Just so important. Even if you don't grind up through the tiers, it might be something to consider and to look at, maybe getting yourself a Sims and using that to teach yourself how to play a destroyer. And I say that because it's a premium ship, so if it's a pretty steep learning curve, so if you're dying a bunch, it's not going to cost you a whole lot of credits to facilitate your learning, right? So that is an option, or maybe get yourself like a tier 5 destroyer. Tier 2, 3, and 4 destroyer actions are really different from the higher tiers. You're engaging your enemies at really close ranges. It's chaotic. It's fun as all hell, though. But a lot of things are happening, and the general ranges of engagement usually are like 5 kilometers or less when you're looking at torpedoes. And then when you get to these later tiers in your Japanese destroyers, especially with 10-kilometer torpedo range, the strategy of your destroyer really changes. But that being said, the close-in fights and the experience you get at the lower tiers is still invaluable at the higher tiers. Things can happen, and suddenly there's a ship right next to you, right? And so you want to be able to react to that. I got really lucky with that dive bomber. God, that was lucky. I do have my anti-aircraft turned on at this time. The reason for it is you'll notice that there are only there's one aircraft carrier left, right? So there's only 2 ships remaining. So I'm not concerned about being seen at this point. It's more or less just trying to finish off the enemies, get the victory that we want. And you can see the way I played the game is I just stayed in the middle on this ocean map, remained concealed as much as possible, used my torpedoes in different waves, shot one off, and then pick another target, shoot the other one off once the first one's reloaded or thereabouts, right? Make use of my smoke when I need it, and then by being in the middle, I'm able to react to either side, any situation. So there were some enemies that were pushing up our base. We had this carrier that was trying to get into our base and behind our lines. I'm able to react to that and put shots into the guy. I didn't actually kill the carrier. I think one of my allies did, but it doesn't matter. We're a team, and we've won. So excellent. I am going to be putting some links to those destroyer guides in my video description. These will be the destroyer guides that I've taken a look at and that I've liked. Definitely not all of them, but I would highly suggest that you guys take a look at some of those guys as well if you're having trouble with your destroyers, or if you just want a quick refresher, right? Obviously the video will be a great refresher for you, but if you want a little more meat or a little more substance, take a look at one of the guides that I'll post in the video description. Overall, I was second overall on the team, got a victory, lots of credits and experience. It was a good battle. So hopefully from the video here, you guys would maybe have a few more ideas on how to use your destroyers more effectively, and maybe increase your skill level as well, hopefully. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching the video through. Leave any comments that you may have. Hit the old like button, and if you are not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. As always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.